Thank you, Mr. President. This bill resolution is germane as it relates to states of emergency and appropriate legislative response. Our proposed legislation would amend the executive law in relation to the length of time of a state disaster emergency declaration. The proposal would impose a maximum of 30 days for a disaster declaration by the executive. Any continuation of the declaration and the suspension of laws would require legislative approval, as exists elsewhere in the United States. All declarations would be enforced for no more than 30 days without the approval of the legislature. Residents, through their elected representatives in Albany, would have greater participation in the process of how to close and reopen, for instance, a particularly important consideration in light of a potential second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. The bill also requires the governor to transmit weekly reports to the legislature during an emergency declaration and mandates communication by the executive with the parties affected by a suspension of laws during a state disaster emergency. The inconsistency that has occurred in relation to determining what is open and what is essential versus that which is closed and non-essential has proven chaotic and contradictory, leading to unnecessary confusion amongst employers, employees, and residents. By requiring the governor to solicit input from local governments, school districts, individuals, businesses, associations, and other parties affected by suspended laws and other executive actions, the confusion and inconsistencies surrounding executive orders can be greatly reduced. The weekly reports being proposed in the bill could have led to significant improvements in how to properly assist nursing homes or make improvements to the unemployment benefit system, which have been a source of frustration and heartache for many of our constituents. The New York State Constitution, just as the United States Constitution, was established using the principle of separation of powers in order to ensure the three branches of government, including the legislature, were able to function equally to provide a system of checks and balances for our citizens. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor has suspended more than 250 laws. While the New York State Constitution grants the executive this authority under a statutorily enacted state disaster emergency declaration, which was expanded in early March, the frequent and sweeping nature with which certain provisions of law have been suspended or extended since then is alarming, especially considering that the state constitution also establishes that the power to create laws rests with the legislature. Executive orders should never be used to circumvent the legislative process or limit the input of elected representatives. This bill ensures the legislature's rightful role as a co-equal branch of government during a state disaster emergency declaration by making the governor's actions subject to review. This does not prevent the executive from doing what he or she feels is necessary to keep the people of New York safe. Rather, it ensures the systems of checks and balances intended by our Constitution. For these reasons, Mr. President, I ask you that you reconsider and rule this resolution germane.